down with OTC? OTC. Are you down with OTC? Are you down with OTC? OTC. Are you down with OTC? Down with OTC. Down with OTC.
Holy cow, what was that? That was a massive, massive delay in getting us on here live. What is going on? It's great to see everybody. You guys are here on the chain, the How to Review early morning edition, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Saturday. Appreciate everybody joining in. This is Jeff. You can probably read my name over there in that corner. Make sure you guys run out, get your best coffee you can get. I prefer espresso. I think you guys should be drinking espresso because when we get up early in the morning to go through stuff like this, then you definitely want a little bit of espresso. This morning is Death Wish morning. So Death Wish. If you guys haven't checked out Death Wish coffee, it is awesome. We've got no affiliation with Death Wish coffee whatsoever. Giving them a shout out. Why? Because I like the coffee. And actually, I had a little bit of a Segfredo left over in the grinder this morning. So this is almost like, 3/4 Death Wish to about 1/4 of the Segfredo. I'm thinking I'm going to mix this every single time because it's just got the flavors and everything coming from every, it's freaking awesome. God, it's good. I was going to bring the bag. I was like, if I could just push the scent of the espresso as it's cooking on the stove over, that would be amazing. But today we've got so many great things to go over. As always, there's constant development in the space. I wanted to take a little moment this morning. We're going to go over the SEC. We're going to go over Ripple XRP. We want to look at this transition from the old guard to the new guard. Who is the old guard? Who is the new guard? What's going on as things are developing even politically? How does that, look at my collar's all jacked up here. As things are transitioning politically, how does that impact the financial space, financial markets, as they're dumping fiat currency on the market with no abandon? They're just throwing it out there. How is that going to impact the digital asset space? Is there like a major depreciation in fiat currency and this major rise and climb, in the digital asset space? And even now, it's amazing to me because the stock markets don't seem to ever respond logically anymore. there's so much emotion that goes behind trading in the stocks, in the digital asset space. The one thing that we do know is that the digital asset space blew past $1 trillion market cap the other day. And that is a big number to really give the impression of the direction that everything is moving. And obviously Bitcoin, hitting the big numbers of 40,000, quickly on its way to 50,000, and who knows where it goes from there. But we're seeing that momentum going. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. So we got people tuning in from all over the place. Why don't you guys just give a quick shout out to everyone on here? Let us know where you guys are tuning in from, because the great thing is about the On the Chain community is that we have people from everywhere, all over the world, and it's all sorts of times depending on where people are tuning in from. I know we got people over in Australia. So there you go. You got Nick all the way in from Darwin, Australia, and it's 10:40 a.m. over there. It's always crazy when you have that 10.5 hour, here in this case, I guess it would be a little bit more. But let's see, it's 8:10 over here. What are you, like 14.5 hour time difference? What is that? That's crazy. You got Chip drinking the Pylon espresso. Got a lot of, check that out. Got tuning in from Osaka on the Twitter. So that's always very cool. People from Netherlands. We got Louisiana. We've got Texas. So it is great to see people from all over the U.S. Look at that, Istanbul. What is going on? Try to get the pronunciation. Probably say Gökhan. Not sure if that's correct. Could be completely off. Got Germany over here, more in from Japan, Massachusetts, a lot from the Netherlands. Got Mikey all the way in from Ireland. Lots of great places. So it's awesome to see everybody tuning in from all over. We've got HW from Korea. Korea, if you guys haven't been to Korea yet, you have to put that like on your must travel. Seoul was absolutely amazing. Probably one of the nicest cities that I've been to. And if you make it to Korea, this isn't a travel channel. We're going to get into digital assets. But if you guys make it to Korea, there's two places you have to go when you're in Seoul. One is the seafood market. Two is the electronics market. And if you go to Seoul and you don't go to the seafood market or to the electronics market, you haven't been there yet. So make sure you guys check that out, because it's absolutely awesome. So we've got Crypto Eddie joining us here via Periscope. So great to see you on all the way in from Japan as well. So, all right, let's get this going here. Let's get this started. Sir John, what is going on? So let's see, what are we going to start with? Yeah, it's so crazy. There's so much going on. Don't know really where to start with all of this craziness. We talked about the $1 trillion market cap. Let's get that one out of the way. So I want to pull this one up, because one of the things that we've talked a little bit about is stable coins. And it's interesting because there is, I'm going to pull this, let me pull this up here. And while we're talking, let me just put it into miniature while we're talking. But stablecoin. So one of the things that's been going on, and I've brought this up on the past few live streams with Chip, especially when we get into what's going on congressionally speaking. But there was a bill that was presented by Rashida Tlaib from Michigan and a few others that were really, when you dig in and you start reading it, it's a crushing blow to the digital asset space. So the way you have to look at the division within government is that there's those that are in favor of digital asset, like Warren Davidson, Darren Soto, Tom Emmer, and a handful of others. And then there's a group that have no understanding whatsoever of the digital asset space, and they're trying to crush it. And the one thing that they had focused on was the Stable Act. And the Stable Act is a disaster, because essentially all it's doing is giving full authority to the banks for distribution of the stablecoin. But it goes a step beyond that, because it then requires any entity that is that is creating the solution for a stablecoin or rolls out a stablecoin to have banking licensing. So basically what they're saying is only the banks can do it, and or you need to apply for a banking license ahead of time, and forget that. That's oh, sorry, door plenty. It didn't come out exactly as I wanted. It does. You're right. I was in a rush. I got caught outside a little bit longer than I thought I would be, and I'm rushing, trying to put that thumbnail together on my phone. As I was rushing in the door, I say, you know what? $1 trillion market cap. That's going to be the thumbnail for today. So good feedback on that one though. So anyhow, so as we look into this, the other thing that we are seeing though is that the OCC has actually ruled in on making a determination of banks being able to distribute or hold or manage or custody, whatever it might be, stable coins. And it really has a big impact on what's going on, because one of the arguments, actually, before we get into the stable coins, before we get into this one, let me pull up another one here. Let me see. This one is kind of this one will get us started, because this article showed up on American Banker. And the reason why we have to go through this one is because it's a clear statement of where the authority lies. Is it with the OCC, or is it the CFPB to grant fintech charters? And the key element here is that Brian Brooks is pushing that the OCC is going to be the primary authority, and being that Brian Brooks is very pro digital asset, very pro development of fintech, has already issued certain statements, of what his thought process is. So right here, right off the bat, acting comptroller of the currency, Brian Brooks, pushed back against the recommendation of a task force that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and not the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, should issue these federal charters to the fintechs. Now, this is really key, because again, Brian Brooks is looking at this and saying, look, here's our responsibility. Here's what we do. Here's what we recommend. And he's in favor of the development of the technology, the growth of the technology. And I don't want to call it the simplification of the process, but let's call it the lack of impedance within the process. So it's very, very important, that the agencies within government are actually balancing things out properly in order to push this space forward. We don't want and here we're hyper focused on the US market. So obviously we have people here from all over the world, and Japan is lightning years ahead of where the US is. Other countries are lightning years ahead of where the US is, because they've already created some regulatory framework. Here in the US, we have a lot of agencies that are tripping over themselves, jockeying for position to decide who gets to control what. So instead of trying to come together and figuring out, hey, let's come together in order to push forward one of the most critical, one of the most important technologies of our lifetime, revolutionizing the way money is handled and moved and transacted with, and they're bumping into each other. So there's a big element of that. Obviously, we also have competing political viewpoints. Now, if you begin to politicize money internally, it's one thing, and we've talked a lot about the politicalization of money externally, and obviously that's a reality. We know that money is politicized globally, especially when it goes through SWIFT. When you're putting sanctions and you have disagreements within countries, there's a mechanism in place. When you politicize money internally in your own country, obviously then you have a major issue with that. So that's super problematic. Oh, hey, you know what, I saw this this post come up. I was going through and I caught it there. Giuseppe said, how about some Kimbo or Lavazza? Lavazza, I can get the Lavazza over here. Never heard of Kimbo. I'll have to check out Kimbo to see how that one is. My go-to, Giuseppe, has been from Italy is Segafredo. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. And it's interesting too, because you can go to the Segafredo US website and they have the lesser quality that's more retail. And then they have a nice espresso comes in a red bag, but then there's a black bag espresso from Segafredo that's only available, I believe, just to the Segfredo owned stores, the retail stores, the coffee shops. And so we don't have any of those here. And even if there was one, that black bag isn't available. So I have someone bring it in the country whenever a buddy of mine travels for work, and it used to be often. So I ran out of that supply, so I'm stuck to the red one. But I'll have to check out the other one that you were referencing. So all right. So within this this thought process, right? So we want to make sure that, and I think it's important, from our perspective, because we're discussing it, we're analyzing it, we're trying to figure out exactly where is the space going, how does the space develop, how best can we educate ourselves? Because the one thing that we know that's for certain is that this is the future, right? The future is moving in the right direction. The future is moving in the direction of digital asset, but we also want to make sure that we're aware of and understanding the direction that the right parties are moving us. So if we have elements within the government in the US that are proponents of a digital dollar that have absolutely nothing to do with a decentralized framework, that have everything to do with basically just putting a digital note on a fiat currency and does nothing to fix anything, then what's the point? So we have to get a good understanding of how the internal workings are kind of, I don't want to say orchestrating, but are guiding the development of this space, or at least opening up this space. And we look at Japan. Japan has, over the past couple of years, developed the right direction. They've really focused in on understanding the significance of the blockchain technology. They've understood the significance of the digital asset technology, and they've led the world, led the community, the digital assets community, in the right direction to say, hey, we understand the technology and the value of the technology. And it's hard because we look at it and say, do we all have, what responsibility or what abilities do we have, to go to our government and lobby them and say, hey, we don't think you're managing the development of this space correctly. We think you're more of an impedance to this space versus a positive. But when we're seeing the inner workings of it, I think we get a better understanding, better gauge of how the government is kind of dissecting everything. So I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever. But the one thing is that we're seeing the inner wranglings right now between different organizations within government to try to figure out who's going to be in charge of this rollout overall. So as we move even further into this, so while we have the wranglings and the discussions and the internal squabblings, the one thing that we are seeing is that we're seeing at least more activity, more discussion in and around this space. So overall, it's a net positive. Even if it's a negative discussion, it's a discussion. So over the past couple of years, we've seen limited discussion. What we've seen are bills being presented in front of Congress, and then they're not picked up by anybody. And we've seen, and what's most important of any bill that's presented in front of Congress is that it's bipartisan. Because if it looks, and especially in money or technology or what we're talking about here within the digital asset space, if we have a partisan approach to it, the other side is going to crush it, no matter what. That's just the polarization within politics, that if one side loves it, the other side hates it. This side loves it, then this side hates it. So what you need is to have the bipartisan effort. And that's what we saw within the Token Taxonomy Act. And the reason why that was so significant, and now we're seeing all the the offspring of that Token Taxonomy Act discussion is all happening right now. So we have the original Token Taxonomy Act from, what was it, 2017, I think, is when it was first presented. Then I believe it was 2018. I know that Chip and I brought a group together to help make a video for Warren Davidson's office so that they could actually use it to try to get some understanding from the community of the importance and significance to the community of the digital asset space and of what the Token Taxonomy Act would mean. Now, that was the beginning. So that was over the past couple of years, and then you see little activity. It never really elevated to a point where the Congress would actually sit down and have a solid, intelligent conversation over it. Many of the bills, especially the Token Taxonomy Act, got to committee, and then it just died over there. So everyone from other countries, you're thinking, hey, what in the world is going on in the U.S.? Why is it that everything is so stalled and so slow? But now what we're seeing are the offspring. So we see other countries have rapidly progressed in the space, and the U.S. is still trying to figure things out. So that's where on this one, it's interesting because we have a new year, we have new activity. And again, some of it is negative activity, some of it is positive activity. So here, right away, and according to this article here, you have the future trading and times of change forecast. Well, it's just an interesting title, interesting article overall, thinking along these lines. So you have new U.S. government rules and guidance aimed to boost cryptocurrency tax, clarify legal liability. You have the Stable Act. Do they have and what can come of that if it goes anywhere? Is there going to be more KYC AML reporting? What's going on with the IRS? OCC. So it's amazing that even though we feel like everything's at a standstill, things have been moving forward. Now, for all of us in the U.S., the one thing that we are seeing is that on our tax forms, because we have to file taxes every year, there's a checkbox, just a checkbox, that asks whether or not you purchased or received digital asset over this period of time, over 2020. So, and that's going to be on the personal tax form. So this is really now the government, so the IRS, saying, hey, who out there has been buying the digital asset? Now, it's not asking you to list what you bought. It's not asking you for anything, because if you bought it and you held it and you don't have a taxable gain off of it, then you're not going to report it. You're not going to report gain or loss if you haven't sold it. If you bought, they just want to know who bought digital assets. So that's a big change moving forward. So the one thing that we do identify within government is that things move relatively slowly on purpose. And so here we're starting, things are churning up a little bit. So you have the disagreements within the different parts of government, but you're starting to see that there's at least some acknowledgement that the digital asset space is here to stay. Because if they didn't want to acknowledge it, it could be, for the IRS's perspective, hey, we don't want people to make money without us getting our part. But even for them to say that, we understand that you're making money off digital assets, we want to acknowledge that it's a reality, that it's something of value. So they put that on the tax return right away. Understanding the KYC and the AML. And I believe that that is going to become, more entrenched within everything that's going on, which is now the discussion and the argument that's going on between different, divisions within the government to see who is supposed to actually oversee this. Obviously, Brian Brooks, like we're saying earlier, believes that the OCC should be more involved in this process, whereas other elements within within government think that no, that's not the case. And so So it becomes difficult to really uh, go, move into, you know, I would say normalcy. And here, as I was mentioning the Stable Act earlier, and the Stable Act is, again, this is something that was presented by three congressional representatives, all Democrats. Now, remember what I said earlier, that in order to present a bill that is it needs to be bipartisan in nature. You can't, have it 100% partisan, because if it's 100% partisan, most likely one side is going to try to kill it, regardless if it's good or not, because it could be the greatest thing ever. And you're going to get people against it, mainly because it's 100% partisan. Now, in this group, and I don't like the Stable Act, and there's a lot of reasons I don't like it. One of them is that it's extremely partisan. The reason why I love the Token Taxonomy Act is that it was bipartisan, and many of the bills that had spawned off of the Token Taxonomy Act were all bipartisan. None of them were just partisan in nature. And this one came out very, very like vindictive, very controlling, and I think very destabilizing to the space, mainly because of the way certain things within it, can be, identified. Like right here, look at this. Some interpretation of the proposed legislation say that it would require any node that processes stablecoin transactions to have a bank charter or face criminal liability. So could you imagine, how difficult is it to get a bank charter? Getting a bank charter isn't easy. Getting a bank charter is difficult. It could take a long time. Right now, we have stable coins rolling out, and you put something like that in, and it's going to crush not just the stable coins, but it could potentially then filter over to other asset. So if you have nodes that are processing, whatever, it doesn't matter at that point. So they start here and then they move forward. So that's awesome. I was just looking at Kimbo's and Napolitan coffee factory in Naples is the capital of espresso. After the COVID mess, just come over here and we can drink one with the Vesuvio on the background. That'd be awesome. That'd be great. Yeah, as soon as this mess over, we're definitely planning a trip back over to Italy and some other places. So, yeah. So anyhow, hopefully, that doesn't, you guys are interested in that, because I think, it's important. Now, the one thing that we do know, again, is if our congressional representatives, are going to have to vote on something like that, once it goes to committee, then it has to actually leave committee before it gets voted on. And the one thing that we tried to do a couple years ago with the Token Taxonomy Act was to actually help and assist getting the word out. It was way too young. It was just too early. Now, if they present it again, I think we might have some better opportunity to actually get some of these positive bills passed. So here's one comment here. Harold says the IRS is not part of the government. It is a foreign corporation under the jurisdiction of the District of Columbia per the Emergency Banking Act in 1933. That's interesting. I mean, you can get into that discussion. I was having a discussion with someone just the other day about, where the IRS gets its authority from. Does it have the authority or does it not have authority? That's a discussion. You can really dig into it, because it goes back to the Constitution as to whether or not the IRS has full authority under the Constitution to collect income tax the way they do. So that's a whole nother conversation, and not something I want to get into here right now. But Richard, appreciate the support and really appreciate that. Everyone contact House representatives. Let them know how important the crypto adoption really is and how it should be at the forefront of their agenda. I agree with that. The fact that there's definitely a lot of foot dragging. If there's a lot of foot dragging, it has to get to the next level. Like Richard's saying, it has to. And the thing is that the one thing that holds it up is this wrangling within government here in the U.S. Now, with all of that happening, the one thing that we do know that's going on is the SEC going after certain entities. Now, the SEC has it out for Ripple. We've talked about the SEC v. Ripple a lot over the past couple of weeks because it's probably one of the most critical cases in the U.S. right now as it pertains to digital assets. Now, if the SEC v. Ripple goes in the direction that that the outcome is that XRP is not a security, that the SEC can't prove it, then everything is good, right? In terms of the space in general. If the SEC wins some victory over Ripple, where the outcome says that that their transaction of XRP was indeed the sale of an unregistered security, then things get interesting. I don't know exactly how the outcome is going to turn out in that scenario because the complexity of this situation is that, you know, if we look at Japan, Japan has it on their books that XRP is not a security. So if that's the fact, that in the UK and in Japan, Australia, and other parts of the world, that it's not a security, how does the US deem it a security? And the fact is, and this is really, really important, because as we're looking at this wrangling with all these different agencies, the one thing that comes out of all of this is that most of the agencies don't understand the digital asset space. They're being very reactionary. Oh, the OCC, Brian Brooks, is trying to be very proactive. Now, the one place that you never want to be in business is in the reactionary place. You always want to be in a proactive position. So many times you'll find yourselves in a reactionary position because shit happens, right? But the thing is that the government shouldn't always be in a reactionary mode. They have to get to a point where they become proactive in nature, to where they understand these technologies as they are being presented to them. And what we've seen over the past 2 years is that when they hauled Facebook's group, when they got, you know, Libra, the Libra team, and they hauled all the tech people in front of Congress, the one thing that was clear is that there were almost nobody in Congress that truly understood technology. They didn't understand Facebook. Oh, great. Thanks, Harry. So, you know, they didn't understand. They don't understand, you know, the utility of their phone. And it's mind-boggling, you know, to see how their mindset kind of unfolds, to the point where if they don't understand Facebook or Twitter or texting, you know, how do they comprehend the digital asset space and the benefit of the digital asset space without doing any research, without understanding exactly what's going on in other parts of the world? And to me, that's a little bit, you know, mind-boggling. I mean, you look at it from a perspective that within government, you know, what's the one thing that they do in government is they pass bills without reading them, right? So we just had another bill that was passed through, 5,000 pages, and nobody read the bill. 5,000 pages. Now, why would you approve something that you didn't read? I mean, that would be like, you know, obviously, if you go buy a car, these contracts, or you buy a house and the contracts are like, you know, 10, 20 pages, whatever, and you're reading through it in a small print and a lot of legalese, and you go and you sit down and you want to, and you sign off it anyways because you don't read it. The thing is that if you've bought one car, and you actually sit down and you do read it, you've bought a lot of cars, or you know, it's all going to be the same. And if there is anything that is negligent on behalf of the car seller, there's laws against that. But they're not the ones making laws. They're just writing a legal contract, making certain statements about certain things. So when you go and sign off on it, you're like, oh, I don't want to necessarily read through everything. I'll read through some of the key statements, and that's it. Then you get into government, and they're just passing bills through without reading them. And that is very destructive, you know? So here in this scenario with the digital asset space, it's so important that they have some semblance of understanding. And at the end of the day, in order to gain that understanding, sometimes it has to come from the people. So that means that we either have to go to our state representatives, and we have to have conversations with our state representatives, or we have to go to the level of Congress to talk to them about what's going on in the digital asset space. So for all, I don't know, I kind of got on this rant. It doesn't mean a lot to people that are global. I apologize for that. It's more relevant to what we're doing here in the U.S. because in a lot of other countries, there's already some normalcy in the digital asset space. India, another one, there's a lot of conflict at the government level in terms of adopting or accepting digital asset. And we saw that over the past couple of years, disagreements where they shut down the exchanges, and now maybe there's some acceptance to where things are starting to open up again, so it becomes, relevant. Anyhow, all right. I didn't mean to go down that tangent because I know it's not as exciting for everybody outside of the U.S., but gives you a little perspective on what goes on over here. So, but a lot of great people bouncing in here. Appreciate everybody being here. We got, let's see, Ms. C just jumped in. Yeah, we've got, let's see who else just bounced in over here. We've got, here we go. Just put it up there. I probably won't be able to pronounce your name properly. It was at Guillaume. But he said, do you think that if Visa comes along with its own crypto, it might crash crypto market as it is now? I think that's a really great question because, one of the things that we have seen is that Visa, MasterCard, Amex, all of the big ones are in the money moving business. They don't necessarily all develop the technologies that help move the money. Maybe they do, they end up buying or they hire or whatever it is. But they do a great job of facilitating that movement of money and the longer term settlement. Are they going to crush the space? I think the space is large. I don't think they can crush the crypto space. I think they can be a participant in the crypto space, and it just gives people more options. So Visa with a credit card is different than instant settlement of cash. So there's still going to be Visa, Amex, MasterCard. Maybe they'll utilize the digital asset space to speed up their settlement process to move money. But from especially when it comes, is for the business owner, because if you think about it, if you do a transaction with a Visa card, settlement doesn't happen instantaneously. So you as the buyer, you use your credit card, Visa, Amex, or whomever, they're basically stating to the seller that this person is good for it, and we're extending them credit in order for them to buy your goods. So go ahead and you're not going to get your money right away. Their money isn't coming out of their account right away, so they're an intermediary. But so the one thing that's key in this whole equation from Visa's perspective is that they're able to do it with less cost. So instead of it cost whatever their cost is, I don't know what the cost of Visa internally is to process. I know what cost is externally as a seller. You're going to pay 2.5 or 3% on the money in order to utilize this credit scenario that they're offering to the consumer. So you're paying for the right to do that, but you're also not getting instant settlement. So there's always an opportunity for a retraction of the funds. So, and that's a reality. So that's one important aspect of doing business, because as we go out as consumers to buy, we want to know that we have that comfort and trust built in that I can go and buy something from somebody and it's being backed up by a bigger entity, a Visa or an Amex or whatever, that if the seller doesn't fulfill their obligation, that money can be taken back or at least put on hold. And so that's the comfort level. Now, the whole structure of that has to be done more transparently, more cost effectively, and quicker. And if you can do that, then the cost to Visa, Amex, MasterCard, whomever, is decreased. And that impacts the business, because hopefully at that point, they then will transfer the cost savings onto the business owner, and hopefully, offer the credit terms to the consumer at a lower rate. Now, the Visa and MasterCard, Amex, all these guys, I believe that they're also fighting for their own survival, because yes, they've got the network, they have the consumer base, they've been entrenched for a long, long time, but so has Swift. And Swift is being unseated by Ripple, but they're not going down without a fight. Hence, the SEC v. Ripple case is definitely actively involved in the fact that Ripple is finally making big progress. The banking industry is seeing this movement in progress. Swift is seeing this development and move. Hence, you have these cases coming up, and there's so much more to it. But it's really, really key at this point, I think, as we start identifying the significance of this digital asset space, because the digital asset space, what it's going to do, how it's going to really restructure and change, the availability of money is monumental. It's unbelievable. So even, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, the writing's on the wall. If you could offer decentralized credit through, you have DeFi, you have peer-to-peer, you have all these other mechanisms in place. You have all these other mechanisms in place that could offset what Visa and MasterCard. Think about loans. Think about small business loans. If you've ever gone to a bank to get a small business loan, it's very it's very difficult. It could take a long time to get a small business loan. Then you have sites like Prosper. Prosper's been around for a long time, to where you could go into a forum where you can actually borrow money from other people, and they're going to lend you that money at whatever percentage interest rate. And that's amazing, right? That you can do that in a peer-to-peer environment. Now take that peer-to-peer environment, put it in the blockchain with digital asset in a decentralized framework. All of a sudden, you're cutting out a lot of the fat as well. So now you don't need the people involved as much, but the structure, the safety, the security, the transaction process, everything is faster, more seamless, and cheaper. So there's so much that is happening, and that's the transition from the old guard. So when I reference the old guard, we're moving from brick and mortar, old guard, banking, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, all of these entities, all of these organizations that are, and Swift, they're trying to hold on, to what they've had over all of these years, and it's being disrupted by fintech and by the digital asset space. So right now, that's the conflict. And one of the things, that repetitive theme that we've talked a lot about, Chip and I, on this, is trying to identify, and we've asked everybody we brought on the exchange. We talked to Alex Mashinsky about it. He's the CEO of Celsius. We've asked Chorus Wang about it. He's the CEO of BitTrue. We had the CEO of Binance US on. We've had multiple CEOs on from big exchanges. And the one single question I've always asked all of them is, when is the flippening going to happen? Do they see the blurred lines between the old guard, which is the banking industry, and the Visas and the brick and mortars, and the fintech and the digital asset space? When that blends together, who replaces who? Does the digital asset space, because there's billions and billions of dollars, obviously we know $1 trillion funneling through the digital asset space, that in many cases is already overshadowing much of what is happening in the banking space. So obviously the banking space altogether is worth, a lot more. But think about, Bitcoin right now and the direction Bitcoin is going in. What is the semblance, the significance of Bitcoin, which went from moving individuals away from banking structure to financial institutions and big corporations and people around the world identifying Bitcoin as the stable store of value, even though it's not stable, right? It can have a retrace at any point, and we could be sitting on $20,000 Bitcoin. Right now it's 40,000 plus. But that is the mechanism that was put in place. Before it was, hey, the retail guy, if you want to go out and buy pizza, for 10,000 Bitcoin, you can do that. You can buy 10,000, you can buy a pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin. But now as you move forward, the cost, the time, the energy requirement of moving Bitcoin is exceptionally high. So now we've really, now we truly understand that Bitcoin is, its use case is a store of value. And it's amazing. So here I am, I'm taking all of my years in business, and applying it to, and all my logic, from politics, business, everything, and applying it to what's going on in this space right now, and seeing amazing things. And so I look at our comments, and the people involved in this community are absolutely amazing from all over the world. It's the first time in our history, and I've done business all over the world, and I've never held back. It's amazing, the business, when you do business in other parts of the world, and then you get to travel to those countries, and you're in those countries working. I've worked in other countries, and I've had the opportunity to travel for pleasure in other countries, and it's this commonality of people coming together. To me, that is what's representative in the digital asset space, because it's the first time in maybe forever that the people have had an opportunity to have more control over their own wealth. And I think that is a critical movement, a critical migration into the right direction. The powers that be, the old guard, will not go down silently. They're going to continue to fight back. So I don't know if this transition is going to be a year or 20 years. Things happen over time. It's already been a decade. So we're already on the 11th year of this transition. Bitcoin started in 2009, 2010. Ripple rolls out their digital asset and their solution to start taking on Swift. 2012. Fast forward, other digital assets roll out. 2017, you see Ethereum, you see Litecoin, you see all these other digital assets start rolling out. I forget what year XLM branched off of XRP, or Stellar branched off from the Ripple, and it's amazing, right? Because this is the transition, the cycle. The cycle began 11 years ago, and now we're moving, and now things start snowballing. The only thing that stands in its way are people that are trying to hold on to power. And some of it is important because you can't allow, really, a country won't allow their sovereignty to be undermined through the lack of control or regulation over the currency. Because a country, part of the sovereignty of the country is their ability, to control the flow of money. But now things are superseding that. And so now there's so many different elements that are at play here. But again, going back to the old guard, the new guard, what I love about this is that you could be anywhere in the world. I had a conversation with a gentleman, trying to think where he was. He might have been in Nigeria. I can't remember whatever country he was in. And, he's working on some stuff. And all of a sudden he writes me a WhatsApp. He goes, man, the company I was working with, they let me go today. They fired me. I said, man, why'd they fire you? He goes, because I was looking up competitive information on the computer of a competitor. They thought that he was, trying to go work for that competitor. So they fired him. I'm like, man, that's horrible. I can't believe they fired you. And then we started having a conversation. We ended up getting another job, but we started having a conversation. I said, man, the best thing that you can do over there is start your own business. I said, here we are, I'm in the US, you're in whatever country it was in. Let's call it Nigeria. I said, you're over in Nigeria. I don't know the rules of how to start a business in Nigeria, but the one thing that is 100% certain is that you can rely on me for the product that you need, and I can connect you with people all over the world that have other similar type products that you can connect with, and you can start your own business. Then we looked up exactly, what the legal framework of that he would have to go through to start his own business. I'm like, man, this is just like one little element, one little subset of how people can communicate with each other. And then I said, what the missing element is? The missing element is, how can you seamlessly transact the business through currency, through digital asset? Cut out all the fat, cut out all those elements that are trying to get a little bit of your business. And that's what kills me, right? So if you guys have ever done international business, you know that working through Swift is extremely, will bog you down. It bogs down the process. It can be very costly. It can be very time consuming. It has a failure rate, and it doesn't have a net positive. You don't have it's just a way of doing business, but there's a cost for us to let that, to complete that transaction. The other element, something that we talked about the other night, which is, a key element. I made a video on this on the other channel, which is the significance of the blockchain technology, the significance of where Ethereum's going, the significance of what Flare is doing. And Flare has superseded, in my opinion, where Ethereum is. Flare is completely understands the direction that we need to, that we need to take this entire space, because at the end of the day, a blockchain is going to develop in the direction we believe it's going in. It needs to be out of the control of the government. So the government, going back to that Stable Act. So that Stable Act I was talking about earlier is sponsored and co-sponsored by elements within the government that don't understand the financial aspect of what they're doing. They're trying to crush a technology because of a misunderstanding. Now, if the government is in control of the technology and the flow and development of the technology is not going anywhere. You're going to slow it down to a grinding halt. Could you imagine if you were to take, Microsoft in the early years, and granted, Microsoft did face an antitrust violation and the government did sue them, for putting their Internet Explorer on every copy of software, Windows software that went out on every computer, and the government and those that petitioned in the complaint said Microsoft had an unfair advantage, antitrust, blah, blah, boom, let's sue Microsoft. It was also the impetus that burst the bubble of the 90s. 2000, bad financial year, markets crashed due to this wasn't the reason, but this is the pin that burst the bubble. And it was amazing. So, but could you imagine if the government then said to Microsoft, hey, by the way, we think that the internet browser is really a critical element to being able to do and search and all this stuff. We don't believe that you should regulate, or we believe that a government agency should regulate the internet browser from this point forward. And in order to do so, you need to register. Any company that creates a browser needs to register their browser activity as a library of whatever, and it's going to fall under, I'm just making it up, there's probably no such thing as the library division of whatever, and they're going to regulate how you flow, and they're going to oversee it, and you won't be able to do it unless you get that licensing. And oh, by the way, it's going to take you months or years to get that licensing. So could you imagine where the internet would be right now? And this is kind of where that's the direction they're trying to crush the technology. Now, go into our business right now. This is like the most critical element of the development of our business and the development globally. I'm talking about global business. We can talk about individual, localized business as well. How is it that, with the concept of all these different technologies that are out there within this space, whether it's the Stellar Foundation's, primary principle of, or their objective, if you go in and read the Stellar Foundation website and white papers and everything, you realize that their objective is to bank the unbanked. They want to bring money and banking opportunities to those who haven't had them. So there's so many elements within this space, and they're trying to overcome the obstacles, which in many times are government entities that are blocking, or the old guard that are blocking opportunities of all these people to get involved in the solution. So there's always that layer, and that to me is the representation of where this global phenomenon is for digital asset. I know this was like an hour rant. I had all this stuff planned out, and then I just kind of slipped and I went down this ramp. But to me, it's so important. You know, it really, really is. And again, you know, here I am. I'm just sitting here, you know, talking to you guys, looking at my laptop and talking to a camera, and I bring a lot of years of my own business experience and knowledge, and I'm just trying to analyze, you know, and that's what we're doing here. We're workshopping, analyzing, thinking through this, you know, and hopefully, you know, getting a much better understanding, and then also seeing this technology blossom the way it was meant to blossom. So, you know, apologize for not being able to get to a lot of the great comments that I saw flying through here, because I've seen, you know, quite a few of them. Won't be able to do that, unfortunately. But I see we've got Franklin Brown over here, probably from South Africa. But he says South Africa fully supports XRP, and we're seeing that in a lot of places. And the digital asset space is growing at a rapid pace. So meant to mention this earlier, but if you guys are brand new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Why? Because it's easy to hit the subscribe button. And when you do, there's a little bell notifier. And if you don't hit that bell notifier, you don't get notified every time we post a brand new video. We are streaming pretty much every day, which is awesome. Typical time, we do Sunday evening roundtables, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And now we're streaming pretty much every day at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except for Fridays and Saturdays. Saturday, we do 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if we can pull it together and get it done, maybe Chip and I will get a live stream out, or maybe Chip will get a live stream out today, later on today. I don't know. It's up to Chip if he's going to be doing that. I'm putting him on the spot. But totally appreciate everybody being here with us. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one, if that's later today, for sure. Tomorrow on the roundtable at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check us out then. And I am out. See ya.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.